Hey guys, Stay Patient here, back with another Fallout 4 video. I want to just apologise for the fact that I haven't uploaded any for a couple of weeks or so. I have some sort of long-term health problems, which has been getting in the way a bit, but that also means that I'm a bit sniffly today. My sinuses and throat are a bit funny, so I apologise if that becomes an issue as well. I'll try and keep it as quiet as possible, but I really wanted to kind of fight through the illness and bring you guys a video that I've been wanting to do for a while now. I want to really talk about the leveling of Fallout 4. Now, as you guys like this, as you subscribers will know, if there's any subscribers watching, if you see my other videos, I'm trying to really help new players to understand the game and therefore enjoy it more, because it's one of those games that isn't really explained all that well. They don't hold your hand, and I like that. I like being able to sort of work things out for myself, but a lot of us are at an advantage in that we've played Fallout 3, New Vegas, and we sort of know the basics of Fallout, so we can learn the new features quite easily because it's not all new to us. But for a lot of you, it's entirely new to you, and there's a lot to take in. There's a lot of features that aren't even introduced in the game, so I've been trying to kind of explain those and help you guys to get the most from the game without just feeling like you're out of your depth. And I think the most important thing when it comes to that is really trying to understand the leveling system, and also sort of having a bit of knowledge as to which perks and which specials are particularly important for the game, because you don't want to get sort of hours or dozens of hours into your playthrough and realize that you're lacking in some key areas. Of course, you can adjust your character as you go, because there is no level cap, so you can keep you can go off and farm some XP or whatever and change your character. But it's just nice to have a rough idea of which perks are particularly useful, because some of them are best to take really early on in the game, because they're going to have a bigger impact on your playthrough if you have them right from the beginning. So yeah, I'm just here to kind of try and help you new players, and I'm hoping that anyone who's sort of considers themselves a Fallout veteran may well benefit from this as well. There might be some points brought out that you might not have thought of or come across, especially if you've not played Fallout 4 yet, because things are quite different when you compare it to the previous Fallout games. So let's start off by bringing up our Pip-Boy. Now, the Pip-Boy is something you won't have right at the beginning of the game. You'll need to play a little bit of the game. It's only like half an hour or something, and you actually pick it up in this room that I'm in now. It's the final room before you leave the vault. So you'll come up here as part of the story. You have to pick up the Pip-Boy off this guy that's lying here, and then you will exit the vault. Now, I'm going to just bring it up and bring up the perk chart, because this is a chart that you're going to spend a lot of time looking at and buying perks and specials, etc. But just to explain what special means, when we refer to the special stats, it's these core abilities or these sort of core attributes along the top. Now, I will just mention, ignore the points that I have in them. This is not the build that I'm going to be talking through. In fact, I'm not going to be talking through a specific build as such. We're going to be kind of creating a build together and talking about where you want your points to begin with. But, you know, ignore these. This is just a bit of an experiment I was doing. But it does serve a purpose in that we can explain how these things work. So we got special here. Each letter stands for a different attribute. So you've got strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. Now, all of these have their own benefit that is tied in with the actual special stat itself. So with strength, as you put more points into strength, you do more damage with melee attacks, and also you carry more. And all of them have got similar sort of benefits. But also, the amount of points you have in any of these particular special stats determines which perks you can take from that column. So this strength column, we have 10 perks here, and there are 10 perks under all of them, as you can see. It's a sort of 10 by 7 grid, I guess you could say. And everything under strength is strength related. Everything under perception is related to perception, and so on. So as you can see, some of these are sort of coloured in, and you can see the detail. Some of them are kind of just silhouettes, like dotted line outlines with no detail. those ones are ones that you can't take because you don't have enough points in that skill, in that special. So strength, we have 1 point in strength and we can only access this first perk. We have 10 points in perception, so we could access all of these. Now these, just to confuse things even further, some of these have multiple levels. So for instance, if we had 10 points in perception, we can take the perk from the bottom because as it says there, it requires perception 10. But if I press R1 to jump up to the second level of this perk, the second tier, it says it requires level 26 and perception 10. So just bear in mind that some of these will need a higher actual character level, but usually that only applies to the the second or third tier of these particular skills. I believe you can access the first tier of every single skill in the game simply by having the special stat high enough to be able to access it. So in other words, I could buy level 1 of all of these perception perks, but then as I get up to higher levels, then I might need to be a higher character level. But that's basically how it works. To access the perks, you need to have enough points in the special. So that's one of the main things that comes into play when you're deciding how to set up your character at the beginning of the game. Because of course you want to make sure that you have access to the perks that you want to be able to use. Now, it doesn't mean that having 10 points in perception doesn't mean I automatically have these perks. It just means I can buy them. And to buy them, you need to use a perk point, and you get 1 perk point every time you level up. So once I reach level 2, I'll be able to buy either a perk, or you can also put that point into one of the specials. So for instance, if I had my character set up like this and I thought, right, there's no perks that I particularly want or need right now, but I'd really like to have lead belly, which I can't access at the moment. I could put 1 point into endurance the next time I level up, and then that means that the following time that I level up, I would be able to put a point into lead belly because I'd have unlocked it by adding an extra point to endurance. So I hope that makes sense, guys. When you start the game, you're going to be given the opportunity to build your character. Now, like I mentioned before, you're not going to have access to your Pip-Boy, so you won't be able to see this chart. So what you can do is maybe go online and find a chart and look at that, but you don't have to worry too much at that point because you are going to get a second chance to redo your special stats. Because when you start, you're not going to be putting any points into the actual perks themselves. All you're going to have is you're going to have a list of these specials, strength, perception, etc. And you're going to have 1 point automatically in each one, which you can't remove. Each one has to have a base level of 1 point. and then you're going to have 21 points available to share out amongst all 7 of them in whatever way you choose. Now, of course, if you shared them out evenly, that would be an extra 3 points for each one because there's 7 specials, and then you would have 4 points in total for each of your specials. But the 2 things that come into consideration when you're trying to decide where to put the points is firstly, which of these particular specials with, the actual benefits that are tied into the special do I want, do I particularly want one of these benefits? For instance, do I particularly need to be able to carry more? Do I particularly need better accuracy and VATs, or, more life or more health or whatever? And, they've all got these benefits tied in, but the main thing that comes into consideration is also which perks you want access to. And that's why it's a little bit, a bit of a shame really when you first start the game, especially if you're a new player, that they haven't included this chart for you to be able to look at. But like I mentioned before, you will get a second chance to redo your specials. So don't worry too much about what you choose, because literally within about half an hour of gameplay, before anything really important happens or before you come across any difficult enemies, you're going to get a second chance where it says, do you want to redo, do you want to change your look? Do you want to change your special stats? All of these different things. And it's actually in this room where you pick up your Pip-Boy. You'll come to this waypoint at the end, which is the elevator to leave the vault. And that's when you get a chance to redo things. So what I recommend is when you come to this room and you pick up your Pip-Boy for the very first time, go into your Pip-Boy and bring up your perk chart and think to yourself, right, what perks do I want? Where am I going to put my special stats when I redo things on the elevator? So with that in mind, we're going to have a bit of a look through these perks and these specials and talk about which ones are important and which ones you can probably do without. Now, the first big thing to mention and talk about is the fact that, well, it's really to do with the main difference in my eyes between Fallout 4 and the previous two games. Now, Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, they both had level caps. So they had a maximum level you could reach. And it wasn't particularly high. Fallout 3 was level 20, and then DLC made it level 30. And I believe New Vegas was level 50, and then it climbed again with the DLC. But obviously the leveling system is very different now. Everything's been condensed. Before you had skill points, you had perks, and you had I forget now, crumbs, but you had lots of different aspects to leveling up. But here you've got everything on one screen, and it's simpler, but it's kind of more diverse in many ways. So that main difference, where in Fallout 4 there is no level cap, the previous games you could only reach a max level, now there's no level cap. What that means is, whereas in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, there were some perks that facilitated your ability to level up quicker. There was even a perk that would allow you to jump a whole XP level instantly. So say you reach level 10, you could take that perk and you'd instantly reach level 11. Now that sounds cool, and you get some benefits because in the old games you'd have other benefits for leveling up rather than just the perks. But at the same time, that was really throwing a perk down the drain, because by the time you reach max level, that perk is doing nothing for you. And even the perks that allowed you to earn more XP, you know, every time you get a kill, you get extra XP on top of what you normally would. You know, those things as well, they were kind of pointless, because sure, you'd level up quicker, but the whole point of leveling up is to get more perks. And if you've already wasted some of those perks on being able to level up, it's kind of counterproductive. But now we have no level cap. On Fallout 4, there's no level cap. You can keep leveling and playing the game forever if you want, which is awesome. But what that does mean is that it's totally worth taking perks that help you to level up quicker. It's absolutely worthwhile, because in the grand scheme of things, you're going to level up a lot faster, and you are going to get access to more perks over the length of your playthrough, even though you've used some of those perks just to help you level up quicker. I hope that makes sense. I'll explain. Basically, we have two main sort of perks or specials that contribute to your faster leveling. Now, the first one is intelligence. That's your actual special. The I from special is intelligence. Now, as you can see, it says intelligence is a measure of your overall mental acuity and affects the number of experience points earned. Now you instantly gain 1 point. Yeah, that's just telling you what's going to happen if you put a point in. But the other one is in luck. Now, this is one that I didn't use early on in my first playthrough because I didn't really read it properly. Let's have a look. I think you need 5 points in luck. So we've got 5 stars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The perk is called Idiot Savant. You're not stupid, just different. Randomly receive 3 times XP from any action, and the lower your intelligence, the greater the chance. Now, if you press R1 to go to the next tier, the next upgrade is randomly receive 5 times XP. And the third one is when you receive extra XP or bonus, when it triggers this particular perk, it can sometimes give you triple XP from all your kills for a short period of time, which I need to look this up, but I think it might be 30 seconds. I think I've read that somewhere. So if you get a kill and you get 5 times XP for it, you might get then triple XP for every kill for the next 30 seconds. Now, you can imagine how useful this is. This really makes a big difference towards the speed of your leveling. But as you noticed, each level of this particular perk says the lower your intelligence, the greater the chance. Now, the reason for that is because intelligence also affects how much XP you get. I don't have exact figures. People have done calculations, and some people have said it's around 6% per level. A level of intelligence, an extra 6%. Other people said 3%. I've seen some people say 10%. So like if you have 10 points in intelligence, it's going to double it. I don't know. I haven't done the math myself. It'd be quite complicated because there's fractions of XP being thrown about and stuff. But basically, they don't want you to have like full intelligence and have loads of these idiot savant, not have this idiot savant perk popping all over the place, because you just be getting shed loads of XP. So this perk here, Idiot Savant, is totally worth taking, but also to make it as effective as possible, you want to have your intellect not too high. So that's the first thing I would say. For the sake of leveling up quickly and getting access to more and more perk points, I would recommend totally going for Idiot Savant, like prioritizing that as your go-to perk. So for instance, at the start, you take it, and then level 2, when you get to level 11 and you have access to it, you take that, and then the third one is level 34. But when I say keep your intelligence low, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these specials, and we're going to just go down through the perks. Not every single one. We might summarize most of them, but I'm going to focus on a few that I feel are important. And with that information, hopefully you should be able to decide what you personally want to go for out of the ones I mentioned and build your character around that. So when I say, keep intelligence low, it's not going to be too low because there are some perks we're going to want to have access to. So when we get to intelligence, we'll talk about that. But if we go back to strength here, now strength, for me personally, I don't usually do melee builds on Fallout. I usually use, guns. But some people like melee builds. So if you're going after a melee build or an unarmed combat or whatever, then, you want to put some points in strength because there's a lot of perks here: extra damage with punching, extra damage with melee weapons, and the ability to create armor, more powerful armor, and better melee weapons. You can modify and create better melee weapons, and also heavy gunners. The reason this is strength is because the heavy weapons need you to be strong to be able to carry them. They're very heavy. But for the most part, there's not a lot in this tree that I particularly go for, but there is one. There is one perk which I don't prioritize, but if I have enough points left over after putting points into the other special stats, if I have enough points left over after prioritizing all the other areas, then I like to have access to Strong Back. Now this one requires 6 points. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Strong Back, it basically allows you to carry more. The first level is extra 25 to carry weight, then extra 50, and then the third and fourth ones are awesome. It says when you're over encumbered, in other words, when you're carrying too much, like more than you can handle and you're moving really slow, you can use action points to run. Now your action points is a bar in the bottom right of the screen, which is used to do your VAT system, your Vault-Tec assisted targeting system, which is basically an aiming system where you slow down time and you target individual parts of an enemy's body, and it gives you like a percentage chance of you hitting it, and it tells you how much life you're going to take off. And you basically key up a few attacks, however many you can afford, using your action points, and then you press go and it kind of unleashes all those attacks. But you can use those to carry on sort of moving at normal speed, even when you're carrying too much. And then the fourth level is where you can fast travel when you're over encumbered. So this is really awesome, but this totally depends on your play style, because if you're like me and you're a hoarder and you pick up everything, which is it's a good way to play in many ways. Like I just pick up everything, and I probably only explore one building at a time before I fast travel home and unload all my stuff. But in this game, one of the new things is the fact that everything you pick up can be used as scrap. They call it junk. So you pick up like cups and plates and cigarettes, all sorts, like anything that's in the world. You put it into your workbench, which is at your settlement, and then when you build stuff, whether it's weapon mods or, walls or furniture for your settlement or turrets, all these types of things. The junk is what's used to, they kind of break down the junk for you and break it down into its fundamental parts, its basic parts, whether it's wood or cloth or oil. And so the more junk you pick up, the more stuff you can build, basically. And obviously, if you can't carry much, then you're not going to be able to carry much junk home, because you're going to want to pick up weapons and armor and things like that as well. And those things weigh quite a lot. So if you feel like you're a hoarder and you're going to want to grab everything, then think about putting 6 points into strength, because not only are you going to get access to this strong back perk, but also you're going to have 6 points in strength, and strength on its own increases your carry capacity. Every point in strength gives you plus 10 to your carry capacity. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll have an extra 60 plus an extra 50. That's another 110 on top of your base carry weight. And then you get the other perks as well, obviously, when you get to higher levels. But don't make that a priority. That's one of those kind of, if I've got enough points left after I've built everything else that's super important, then I can come back and put those points in strength. But it is useful. I do find that useful. The only downside is the fact that you're putting 6 points in just to reach one perk, basically, because all these other perks, while useful, I wouldn't prioritize them. Now let's move on to, did we cover everything? Yeah, everything on strength. Yeah. Now perception. Okay, so we explained the VAT system, Vault-Tec assisted targeting system. This determines how accurate you are. So, if you're aiming at someone's head in VATS, it's going to have a high percentage chance of you hitting it, along with any other body part. And obviously that means you can use VATS from further away. Now, one difference between this game and previous Fallout games, is the fact that the shooting mechanics are a lot better. In previous Fallout games, they were terrible. So you pretty much had to use the VAT system all the time. Whereas now, having high perception is useful for the, to have extra accuracy. But the main thing is that you can hit people from further away with VATs. But because the aiming is so much better, it's much more viable to be able to just shoot those far away people by aiming at them without needing to use VATs. So you might have a sniper rifle or some kind of rifle that's got decent range, and you might not need VATs. So this one is maybe not quite as important as it has been in previous games, but there is a perk which I'm going to point out. Where are we? Locksmith. Now, Locksmith is, for me, one of the most important perks in Fallout, in any Fallout game. Simply because every time you pick a lock, you earn XP, which is nice, you get extra XP, but also it just gives you access to more. You're going to be able to pick the locks on, boxes and ammo crates and things, so you're going to be able to get weapons out of those boxes. You might get much better stuff if you're picking locks. If something's locked, then the chances are it's got cool stuff in, right? So if you want the better guns in the game, you're going to probably need to be able to pick some locks. Also, being able to get access to rooms that are locked, and it can sometimes give you easier ways of completing missions, like taking an alternate route, not having to fight through a ton of enemies, or it's just nice to be able to know that you can get anywhere, basically, because if you're going around and there's a door that you can't pick, you're going to be thinking, oh man, what's behind there? I really want to know. It's just going to bug you. So there's multiple levels to this one as well. The first one, you can automatically pick novice locks. So the lowest level of locks you can pick without even having this perk. But then as you get through the game, you're going to come across advanced locks. So that's the first level. And then you have expert locks, master locks, and that's the top level of lock. But then when you get to level 41, which is quite a leap, but by the time you're at that level, you'll have most of the important perks that you want sort of sorted out. When you get to level 41, you can buy this perk that makes it so that your bobby pins never break while you're lockpicking. That simply makes lockpicking a lot quicker, because you don't have to worry about going really slow to make sure you don't break your lockpick. And also it just means that it's just easier and nicer. You're not going to be having to worry about losing lockpicks if you break one. You can just you could have one lockpick if you wanted and just do every lock you come across nice and quick and get the XP from it. So that's nice as well, but that's one of those you'll get much later on in the game. But this is another one that I prioritize. I sort of take Idiot Savant, which we mentioned about tripling your XP occasionally. And then I focus on things like Locksmith. And there's one or two other perks that I'm going to point out that I focus on really early on in the game as well. So I totally recommend having 4 points in perception. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, Locksmith. Now, what I usually do is I go down through and I think, right, are any of these other ones super important? These are all useful. These perks are handy, but they're not like things that you desperately need right from the beginning. That one's nice. You get extra. The third level gives you plus 25% accuracy to headshots in VATs. But again, it's not absolutely imperative to get that early on. Whereas the lockpick one, I would say, is important. So when you're building your character from the beginning, or maybe from the second time when you get to redo it, I would start off with 4 points in perception. Again, this is totally up to you, but it also gives you access to perks like Rifleman, which is really good because the rifles in this game are great, and also that's a really diverse perk because you have normal rifles, then you have laser rifles, even shotguns count as rifles, anything that's long basically and not rapid firing. And to be able to save ammo, you're probably going to want to focus on single shotguns rather than rapid firing because you'll just rinse sort of through your ammo quite quickly if you've got automatic firing on a lot of your guns. So that's a really useful perk. Again, don't sort of grab it straight away. It's one of those kind of perks where if you don't have access to anything else that you particularly need at the moment, then you can pop one in there. And we mentioned, didn't we, that every time you level up, you're going to get a point. So you can sometimes, plan things. Sometimes you don't have access. So for instance, if you're on the lockpick, you might be level 5 and you don't have access to the second level of the locksmith yet because it's level 7. So you'll think, right, I'll go for something else. And you can kind of plan a few levels ahead. You think, right, that one's available in 2 levels time. That one's available in 3 levels time. So I'm going to go for something else for now and then set myself up ready for those other ones in a couple of levels time. Anyway, let's move on. Endurance. Now, this is all to do with like survivability. Now, being able to survive is obviously important in Fallout, but I found I was playing on normal. I was switching between normal and hard. If you're doing the game on the highest difficulty, then sure, you're going to want some endurance and you're going to want some of the perks from the endurance tree. But I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, you might be new to the game and you're probably not going to be diving straight into survivor difficulty. Usually, I just keep 1 point in endurance because there aren't really any perks here that I particularly need. The first one is useful, but again, I don't usually end up taking it because you can wear armor that gives you a lot of damage resistance. And you can have easily 100 odd damage resistance fairly early on in the game. So having an extra 10%, an extra 10 damage resistance per level isn't, it's not the biggest deal in the world. And that's why it's only the level 1 perk. Now, some of these take less radiation when you eat and drink, but you don't need to worry. Don't need to rely on food and drink so much because you have stim packs and you come across a lot of stim packs. And also you can fully heal yourself by sleeping in a bed. So this is really only for those people doing survivor difficulty where there's not going to be many stim packs, and I think it affects your healing when you sleep as well. And these are useful, but I personally, these are all to do with surviving. So, I mean, if you start playing the game and you feel like you're getting owned by a lot of enemies, then maybe put some points in endurance as you level up. But the thing is, you can play, you can hold off going to some of the harder areas. If you've come across some enemies that are too high level for you, then you can come back and do some missions more local and you can level up and get stronger. And every time you level up, you get more health anyway. So you're naturally getting stronger and more resistant as you go through the game. So again, I don't usually focus too much on endurance. 1 point is enough, and that's, you have 1 point in it automatically. Charisma is something that I always view as important in Fallout games because this one, it affects the price of buying and selling things. But most importantly, it affects your percentage chance of succeeding a speech challenge. Now, the speech challenge is basically when you're in dialogue with someone, you might get the option. You get the option of 4 different things you can say, and one of them might be a different color. It might be yellow, orange, or red. And if it's yellow, orange, or red, that means it's a speech challenge, which means that if you say that line of dialogue, there's a chance that the person will accept it, and there's a chance that they won't. Now, it doesn't actually give you a percentage chance. I think in previous Fallout games, it tells you what the percentage is, or one of them at least. I think maybe New Vegas tells you the percentage chance of you succeeding, and that's based on your charisma. Now, the same works here, but obviously it doesn't tell you the percentage chance. It just depends on how much charisma you have. Now, that's useful, but there are ways of increasing your charisma outside of having high charisma to begin with. So you can wear clothes. Now, another thing that's changed in this game is that while you're in conversation with someone, you can actually press the touchpad on the PS4 or whatever corresponding button it is on Xbox, and then look away from the person, bring up your Pip-Boy and change your clothes mid-conversation, and then go back to the conversation. And what that means is if you come across a speech challenge, you can quickly sort of move away from them or turn away from them, put on some clothes that increase your charisma, and then go back. And the thing is as well, you can always make a save before you try and do that speech challenge. So you make a save, and if you fail it, if you want to go back, you can. I mean, it's kind of cheating in a way, but it does mean that charisma isn't the most, it's like maybe not as important as it was in previous games, for the simple fact that you can change your clothes during conversation and increase your charisma that way. But there is a hidden upgrade in this particular special that isn't written there on the screen as you're looking at it now. The charisma, your level of charisma determines how many people you can have at your settlements. And some of these perks are related to settlement building as well. So when you get a settlement, if you're new to the game, you won't really understand what I'm saying, but I'll try and keep it simple. You unlock settlements all over the wasteland, and I think there's 30 odd of them. And you get them through missions that you do for a certain faction. And you don't have to do all of them. You can get a few. You can maybe just focus on one. But you can build up your settlements, and you can put a pylon out that's like a beacon that lets people know there's a settlement there, and they can come and move in and live with you, and then you can assign them to do different jobs, maybe run a shop to bring you in an income, or maybe farm the food so that you've got enough food to feed everyone. And there is actually benefits to having food and water. Obviously it feeds your settlers, but there are things that you can craft using that food and water. So if you have more food and water than you need, if everyone's being fed and you've got excess food and water, you can actually use that to craft things which are useful in the game. And also you can use it, when you do craft stuff, you get XP as well. Now that's confusing things a little bit, but basically to simplify it, the charisma affects how many people you can have at your settlement. So in other words, how big your settlement can become, how much stuff you can have happening there, how many sort of jobs you can have assigned. And so it really depends on how intent you are on focusing on settlements. It is a fun mechanic. It's a lot of fun to do settlements. You can build up a defense and everything, and it's a key part of the game. So what I generally do is I put my charisma up to a level so that I have access to this perk here. I believe it's 6. Yes, it needs charisma 6. You can see it there, requires charisma 6. Now, 6 points in charisma gives you access to the local leader perk. Now, level 1 allows you to establish supply lines between your workshop settlements. What that means is if you have multiple settlements and you put all of your junk that I mentioned earlier, which is used to craft things, if you put all of that in your workshop at your main settlement, if you set up a supply line from that settlement to one of your other ones, that means that when you're at the other settlement, you go to the workshop and you have access to all of the stuff that's in your main workshop, because they're linked by supply lines. So if you had, say, 10 settlements, you could link them all by going from the first one to the second, then to the third and fourth, and do like one single line. It doesn't have to be a full circle, but you can do a single line between all of them. And that means whichever one of your settlements you go to, you'll be able to build stuff using the junk that is in your main settlement. You won't be able to access other things. Like if you store weapons and stuff in your workshop, you won't be able to access that. But when it comes to things that are used for building, it's nice to be able to go to any of your settlements and build to your heart's content, because you have access to all of your junk that is stored at your primary settlement. The second level of this allows you to build stores. So if you're wanting to bring in an income, and especially if you're wanting to earn the trophy, which there's a trophy for reaching 100% happiness at one of your settlements. It's a trophy on PS4 or an achievement on Xbox One. Depending on how how into trophies and achievements you are, you may want to earn that one at some point, and you will need this second level of local leader to be able to do that. But beyond that, there's the rest of them are kind of fun ones. There's things like aiming your weapon at animals or creatures, and you pacify them, and then they can work for you and things like that. That's cool, but it's not something you're going to need to prioritize early in the game to facilitate your progression. But the local leader, again, like I mentioned, I'm going to reiterate the fact that it really comes down to whether you're going to be bothered with your settlements or not. If you're just worried about playing the game and you're just going to ignore your settlement, then you probably don't need many points in charisma. Just looking back through this one, if you do put 6 points in for the local leader, you'll also have access to Lone Wanderer, which is useful, which means that whenever you're traveling without a companion, you take less damage and you can carry more. And I believe this is still bugged in the sense that if you take your dog with you, which is one of your companions, he doesn't actually count as a companion. So if you want to be able to carry even more, you can take your dog out. He can carry quite a lot. You can carry a lot, and you can carry an extra 50 because it thinks that you don't have a companion. And then obviously it just tiers up, gets higher. Where you do extra damage yourself and things like that. But to be honest, I quite like taking a companion with me, because as you increase your friendship with those companions, you get an extra perk. Once you reach maximum affinity with them, you get a new perk based on their playstyle, and then you can move on to another companion, and you can build up a whole list of new perks because of your close friendship with these different characters. But like I say, really, it depends on whether you want to work with settlements to get that local leader perk. So on to the next one. Intelligence. Now, as we mentioned already, this is important for earning XP, but if you're taking the Idiot Savant perk in the luck tree, then obviously you don't want to have your intelligence too high. So where do you want it? Well, let's have a look at some of these perks. Vans is quite useful if you're struggling to find your way around. You can use VATS by, just in case you've taken this perk and you're wondering it doesn't seem to be working maybe. If you hold down the VATS button, it will bring up VATS whether there's an enemy or not. Usually if you tap the VATS button, it will only go into VATS if there's an enemy to target. But if you hold it down, it will always bring up VATS. And if you have this perk, then it will give you a waypoint, give you like a path, like a glowing path along the ground to lead you to where you need to go. But it's all the missions have got waypoints, so you don't particularly need that. I'm just going to mention one actually that I forgot. Now we're talking about VATS a bit. There's a perk over here in the perception tree. Now we've already said that you want to get the lockpick perk here. But above that is the awareness one. Now this is quite useful. If you get to the point where you have a point to spend, you've leveled up and there's none of the key kind of perks that you want to buy, this is a good one to take, because when you go into VATS and you target an enemy, it tells you their weaknesses. It tells you how much protection they have against ballistic attacks, so in other words bullets, and I think melee, and also how much protection they have against energy weapons, so like laser rifles, and also how much protection against radiation, because there's some guns that emit radiation. I mean, that's really useful to know, like, where is their weakness? What kind of guns should I be using against them? Anyway, going back to intelligence. Here we have, okay, the first one I will just mention is medic. Now, this is useful for being able to heal more damage when you use a stim pack, but most of all, again, this is based on trophies and achievements, so if you're not worried about them, you can ignore this comment really. But if you're going for the 100% happiness, I think it's called Benevolent Leader, if you're trying to get one of your settlements to 100% happiness, the best way of doing that is buying clinics, buying the top level clinics, which is the type of shop. And to be able to do that, you need 1 point in the medic perk. Now, again, that's not something you need to prioritize at the start, but I just thought I'd mention it as we're here in the intelligence tree. Anyway, moving on, we've got gun nut here. Now, there are quite a few, perks that are based on modding weapons and armor. Now, this is something that a lot of people are going to probably think, right, I need to get good armor, I need to get good weapons, so I'm going to take all these perks. Now, the other ones are, you've got a couple over here, you've got armorer, you've got blacksmith, and then you've got gun nut, and then you've also got science. Now, that's related to crafting things as well, more like energy weapons and things like that. But if you've seen my other videos, and if you haven't, go and check them out now, because I've done a couple of videos talking about how to mod weapons without having these perks. And it's not glitch or anything. Basically, if you pick up a gun and it's got some cool modifications on it, in other words, it's made up of high level parts, because every gun is made up of parts. You know, you might have a pistol, but then if you put a bigger stock on it, then it's going to become a rifle. Now, if you can, I'm not going to go too much into it because I've done another video on it, but you can take those mods off of a weapon and store them and then use them on another weapon. So some of these, like gun nut, for instance, you need all 4 ranks to gain access to rank 4 gun mods, but that's only if you want to build those gun mods from scratch using junk. But if you've already got a rank 4 gun mod that you've taken off another weapon, you can add that to whichever weapon you choose that's compatible, without having this perk. You don't need the perk. So I never really go for gun nut or armorer or any of these perks that allow you to build things, because you can build them anyway. You just need to pick up all the weapons you come across, take the mods off them by replacing them with lower level mods, and then you have a nice big collection and you can just start creating weapons, and it's great fun. So that also saves you junk. It saves you from spending junk on buying and like creating these mods from scratch, because you've already got them. So gun nut's not as important as it looks, but it does, having 1 point in gun nut does allow you to buy a turret for your settlements, to defend your settlements. It allows you to buy the second tier of turret, which is a lot better than the first tier. And if you're going to be spending a lot of scrap, you know, a lot of junk on building turrets, they cost a lot of oil, and oil's quite rare. So if you're going to be spending that oil, you might as well be spending it on the second tier, like the higher quality turret. And then there are much higher quality turrets than that, with different styles like rockets and energy beams and all that kind of thing. But the second tier of turrets is the basic one, is very useful. So it could be that you want to put 1 point in gun nut at some point when you've got a spare perk point that you don't need to use elsewhere. But for the most part, those crafting perks, you don't particularly need them. But we've got hacker here. Now, hacker is related to hacking terminals. So this, for me, is very similar to the lockpick perk. It gives you access to more things. It gives you XP every time you hack a computer. You know, it gives you like different ways of completing missions, different ways of finding missions. You sometimes hack a computer and it brings something to your attention that you didn't realize, and that leads to a whole new mission. And for me, that's super important. Whenever I play any Fallout game, I have lockpick and hacker. That's like my go-to. They're my go-to perks, so that I can access as much of the game as I wish. And basically the same principles that I talked about for lockpick are important for hacker. So I definitely put enough points in intellect to get hacker. And the next one as well, this is very important. Although this is a crafting based one, this isn't to do with building things. This is to do with breaking things down. So basically when you go to a workbench, like a weapons bench, and you've got some weapons that you no longer need, you might take some of the mods off them. If you've got like some high level mods on them, take them off, and then you can break the weapon down and scrap it. Now, when you first start the game, if you scrap a gun, you only get some basic components like steel. But as you get the first and second levels of this perk, you'll get things like screws, aluminium and copper for the first level. They are slightly rarer. And then for the second level, you get circuitry, nuclear material, fiber optics. These are quite rare things. So if you don't take this perk, you'll find yourself trying to build weapons or build things at your settlement, and you won't be able to because you won't have enough materials. But having this perk means that every time you break down a weapon, which is going to happen a lot, you're going to be breaking down a lot of stuff, whether it's weapons or armor actually, then you're going to get some of the rare materials from them, and that's really cool. And also, if you leave some of the higher level mods on them, if you don't need the mods, you don't have to take them off, like I mentioned earlier. You can leave them on the weapon, and you're more likely to get those rarer components when you break it down. So for me, that's 5 points into intellect. I always go 5 points into intellect. That gives me access to hacker and scrapper, and it also increases the XP you get for every single action. It does slow down, or it does reduce the amount of times idiot savant triggers, but as long as you don't have sort of 8, 9, 10 points in intellect straight away, then you're still going to get idiot savant triggering quite regularly. So let's move on to agility. Now, agility is all about your action points. So how many action points you have. Now, action points are used for VATs. If you go into VATs, it only uses your action points if you trigger an attack. So if you mark an enemy, say you mark his head 3 times, and then you press X to go ahead with the attacks, then each shot will use up a bit of your action points. You also use action points to sprint, and endurance actually dictates how many action points are used when you sprint. But don't worry, if you've got low endurance, like I recommended you have, you're not going to be kind of using up all your action points straight away, because you're not going to be sprinting everywhere, and it doesn't use them too quickly. The other thing that it uses it for is if you do take the strong back perk where you can carry more. Remember the level 3, where if you're carrying too much, you can use action points to run. That's very useful. So if you are over encumbered, you can still move around. You can still move around and loot things. Maybe you're near the end of a mission, you just want to finish it off, and then you can make your way outside by using action points. And if you've got more action points, then it means you can walk further before you have to wait for it to recharge. And then you get back outside, and if you've got the 4th level, you can obviously fast travel home to offload yourself. That sounded awful. To offload all the stuff that you've picked up. Okay, moving on. So this dictates how many action points you have. Now you will get things like legendary armor and stuff, which allows you to have more action points, or maybe it decreases the number of action points that are used every time you use VATs or whatever. But this agility tree, when it comes to perks, for me, agility and luck are the two skill trees or perk trees that are most useful when it comes to combat. Okay, so agility, let's have a look down through. You've got Gunslinger, increases your damage with non-automatic pistols. You've got Commando, which is damage with automatic guns, any automatic guns. But like we said before, the Rifleman is probably more useful for the simple fact that you're not using up so much ammo. You're getting more damage because it's single shot, but you're not wasting loads of ammo by rapid firing and maybe missing some of those shots. But it's still useful, depending on what guns you like to use. Now, Sneak. This tree, agility tree, obviously you get the extra damage from the first 2 weapon types, but it's very much focused on stealth. So if you increase your sneak, you become harder to detect while you're sneaking, which is basically while you're crouched and you're moving around slowly. And then as you get higher up in these, this particular perk, you get other things such as not triggering floor-based traps, not triggering mines. Then you can run without affecting your stealth. And then the last one is not like mega useful, but if you get far enough away, enemies will lose you. But this is very useful, Sneak. But there's also another one that's tied in with it. I'm just going to scroll down. We'll come back to these ones. Ninja. Now, when you do a sneak attack, so in other words, when you're in stealth and no one's seen you yet and you shoot an enemy, you get, I think it's double damage. But if you put points into this perk, the higher it gets, you get to the point where you do 3.5 times damage with a gun, and 10 times damage with a melee attack. Now, I don't really focus on melee, but having the 3.5 times damage with a gun is awesome. I've actually got a friend who spec'd his character with stealth, and he had 10 times damage from melees, and I think he may have increased his melee attack using the strength tree as well. And he took down a behemoth, I believe it was on hard, with one hit. Literally one hit from a sword. And that's because it just multiplies exponentially your damage that you give out, which is awesome. Now, depending on how stealthy you are in the game or how much you rely on stealth, or also if you use sniper rifles, because quite often you can, if you've got a sniper rifle, you'll come across a group of enemies before they see you. So you can quickly duck down and pop a few shots before they notice you, and you can get the like 3.5 times damage. Let me just scroll down through and make sure. I believe this is another cool one as well, which I wouldn't focus on, but you get a greater melee distance, and also the further away you attack with melee, the more damage you do. And I think that's another perk that my friend had when he took down the behemoth with one hit. But ninja, very useful, but it's something that you don't need right from the beginning. You know, you're not going to need to rely on that. You can work on getting all of the important ones that I've mentioned, things like hacker, scrapper, locksmith, and idiot savant. Those four, I think, are the main four that I've talked about, aren't they? Once you've taken those four and you can't, you haven't got access to the next tier of any of them, then you can take things, well, like I've already mentioned, you take things like awareness or whatever you like, really. But you can also start putting more points in agility, and slowly building up your agility and taking some of the perks as you level it up. You got some more stealth-based ones, such as silenced weapons do 15% extra damage, and you can instantly kill a sleeping person. Now, the sleeping person, that's no big deal really for me, because you don't often come across sleeping people that are enemies. But having the extra damage from silenced guns, an extra 50%, that's very cool. And this one as well, this one's very good, the Action Boy. Your action points regenerate 25% and then 50% faster. That's really useful, because action points are, super handy. Using VATs is, a really strong tactic to use in Fallout games. But of course, as we mentioned before, you don't need to rely on it as much as previous games, because the normal shooting mechanics are better, but it's still very useful to have those action points available. So this is a great tree, but it's very, very much combat related, and they're not necessarily perks you need early on. Now, we've already spoken a bit about luck. Luck is another one that's kind of combat related, but it's got some other very useful things in as well. So the first one that we did mention already is Idiot Savant. So I would totally put at least 5 points into luck. Now, luck increases the recharge speed of your critical hits as well, if we look at the top. And critical hits are useful basically rather than getting a random critical hit like in most games. What you do is you have a bar along the bottom of the screen, and you fill up that critical hit by getting successful attacks using VATs. It only works if you're using VATs. But when you filled your bar, the next time you use VATs, you can choose to use the critical. You don't automatically use it, but you press a certain button just before the attack triggers, and you'll use a critical hit and do a lot more damage. Now, some of these perks in this tree, such as better criticals, you can get all the way up to 2.5 times extra damage, or 2.5 times damage on your criticals. And there are some other perks related to criticals, where you can randomly fill up your critical meter, and things like every time you get a kill in VAT, you've got a chance to restore all your action points, things like that. But these again are quite focused on combat. But if you take 5 points to be able to get that Idiot Savant, then that means that you also have access to these first two perks. Now, these are the last two that I'm going to focus on as your kind of go-to perks at the beginning of the game. Fortune Finder, basically you find more bottle caps, which is the currency of the wasteland. And as you go up, you find even more. And also the last level, bear with me for 1 second, my TV's about to turn off. There we go. The last level is where when you kill enemies, quite often they'll explode and they'll leave caps everywhere. Now, you don't get a ton of caps when they do that, but you'll be level 40 by the time you have access to this anyway, so take it or leave it, really. But having the extra caps is just useful. I mean, you'll probably find yourself low on money. There aren't really a lot of things that you have to buy, but sometimes you'll go to a shop and you'll see that they've got a random legendary weapon or armor for sale, and you'll think, oh, that looks awesome. But, I can't afford to buy it, or, I've got enough money, but I don't want to throw away all the money I have just on that one item. But if you've got lots of caps, which you do have, as long as you take this perk, like all the cupboards you look in, and the drawers and the desks and the lockers and everything, most of them will have caps in, and you'll build up quite a collection of money, which is really cool. And the second one is very similar, but basically the same thing, but with ammunition. Now, it's very nice to know that you're always going to be finding more ammo, and you'll never find yourself running short if you take this perk. And again, these two are very much worth taking early on in the game, for the simple fact that collecting ammo and collecting money is an ongoing thing. It's not like a one-off occasion, one-off event or whatever. So if you take it early, you're going to be finding extra throughout the whole of your playthrough. Whereas if you leave it till late, then it's almost pointless, because if you're near the end of the game, it's not going to really affect your playthrough at all. So take it nice and early, and it means you're going to be stocking up all the way through your game. You're going to be adding to your supplies of ammo and money, and it's just going to make the experience a lot more enjoyable and, I guess, easier for you. So let's just do a quick summary, shall we? The ones that I talked about primarily as your kind of go-to ones are possibly the strong back if you're a hoarder, the locksmith, and of course the awareness is quite useful as well. And then we've got in the charisma tree, if you want to work on, where are we? If you want to work on building settlements, then you take the local leader perk. Here you want to take, in the intellect tree, you want to take scrapper and hacker. They're very useful, I find. And then across on the luck tree, you've got the first two there, more ammo and more money. And then you've got idiot savant. So let's just count that up, shall we? Let's prioritize. Let's go for the idiot savant first. So we got 5 points. I'm going to just keep a mental note of this. In fact, I might write it down. I've got a bit of paper in front of me. So we've got 5 points in luck. Remember, we've got 28 points in total. So we've got 1 in each of the actual specials, and then we've got 21 points to share out on top of that. So then we've got hacker, which is 4 points. Oh, sorry, no, scrapper. Yeah, 5 points into intellect. And then we have got the local leader perk, which is here, which is charisma, and that's 6 points. Now, that's not as much of a priority as some of the others, but, we're going to count up the points and see how we get on with this. We've got the endurance tree and the agility tree, which we're not really focusing on at the moment because there's nothing super important for the early stages of the game. But we've got perception. We do want to have access to locksmith. So perception is going to be 4 points. And then possibly up to 6 points in strength for the strong back. Now, we've also got the other two that we didn't do. We automatically have 1 point in agility and 1 point in endurance. So that comes to a total of 12, 16, 26, 27, 28. See, now that's perfect in a way, because we can have all of those points in place. But what you're going to want to do when you create your own build is decide, do I want to be able to carry lots of stuff, or am I going to be more selective and only picking up things that I know I need? If you are going to be more selective, or if you're happy to fast travel home and unload your backpack on a regular basis, then you're probably not going to need many points in strength. So if you do take some of those points off strength, or if you're not interested in doing settlements and you're going to take some points off of local leader, then that's going to leave you with some extra points. And I would put those into agility, because we've already got luck, intellect, and perception as high as we need them, so that we've got access to idiot savant, we've got access to scrapper, and where is it, Scrapper and Hacker, access to Locksmith, all these different ones. So the only ones that are left, I would leave Endurance at 1 because you get enough protection from your armor and you can always just do missions closer to home to level up first. So I would stick Endurance at 1, and then I would always have Luck at 5, I would have Intellect at 5, I would have Perception at 4, and then you've got a choice really. You can either leave your Agility at 1, which will leave you with not many action points to use, and you won't yet have access to these combat-related perks and stealth-related ones. But again, you can start adding to those as you level up. Or you can take some of the points that I would have put into getting strong back or local leader. If you're not too worried about either one of those, I would remove some of those points and shove them straight into agility just to increase your combat effectiveness. So what we're going to do, I'm going to just show you how that looks. I'm going to show you how it looks when you get the second chance to redo your character. I'm sort of finishing this first little section of the game, and it will come up saying change name or special attributes, change appearance. So here we go, change name and special attributes. So I'm going to leave the name at test, so I know that that's this one. I'm going to go to 4 points in perception to get the lockpick. I'm going to go to 5 points, I believe it is, in intellect, and the same on luck. Yep. And then, like we mentioned, from here, I would say it's completely up to you, because we already have access to the most important perks. If you're worried about trophies and settlements, then I would make sure to have 6 points in charisma, and that's quite useful for when you're talking to people as well. You get extra XP, don't forget, every time you succeed a speech challenge. And then I would, like I said, if you want to be able to carry more stuff, then go for 6 points in strength. The only downside to that is that you only have 1 point in one of the most useful combat related specials. Let's have a look here. Reset point allocation. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Let's quickly go through this again. I'm sorry that this is dragging on a bit, guys, but I wanted to be thorough because I know a lot of people are very new to this game and they're looking for some in-depth information on how they should build their character. So if we accept that, we've got low agility, but we can live with that. So finish and exit the vault. Now, I'm sorry if this is like a mild spoiler, but I think everyone... I am just going to... Sorry about this. I'm just going to quickly turn down the volume fully. Simply because they're talking and I don't want to be talking over the game. But yeah, everyone knows by now that you leave the vault, you come out of the vault. But we're just going to leave and we're going to look at our skill tree now that we've changed everything. And we're going to just explain 1 or 2 other quick things before I leave you. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. And I hope there's been some information that's been beneficial to you, even if you've played the Fallout games before. But most of all, I do all these videos in an attempt to make the game more enjoyable for new players, because it can be quite sort of confusing, I guess. So here we are, leaving the vault. You've probably seen this scene multiple times in trailers for the game. And obviously the game's been out for a while now, but I wanted to make sure I was very familiar with everything before I did this video. So, to our perk tree. Here we are. So we have access to the strong back, we have access to locksmith and awareness, we have access to local leader and lone wanderer, which might be useful for some people. Attack dog as well. If you are traveling with your dog and you've got lone wanderer equipped as well, so you can carry more even though you've got your dog with you, you can get this perk which makes your dog more effective. We've also got access to Scrapper and Hacker, and we've got access to Idiot Savant. Now, there's a couple quick things I want to mention. First of all, when you first start up the game and you set up your character, because you're going to have a second chance of setting up, there's one little tiny tip that doesn't make a big difference, but when you very first start up the game and you have to choose your stats, what you could do is put 10 points into intellect right at the beginning. Now, all that's going to do is going to give you a load more XP from anything you do during the first little mission. And then obviously when you redo your character in the lift, as I have just done, then you're going to be able to change everything to how you want it. But because you're not going to level up and have access to any of the perks during the first mission anyway, you might as well just get that little bit of extra XP from hacking terminals or picking locks or killing a few of the small enemies that are around. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's just, just that little bit extra boost right at the beginning of the game, help you to start leveling up a bit quicker. So right at the beginning, if you want to put 10 points into intellect, and then redo your stats once you get to the lift, that's probably ideal. Another thing to mention is that there is something else that sort of facilitates you leveling up, and they are called bobbleheads. You've probably heard of them, and anyone who's played the game will know all about these. But the bobbleheads are collectibles that are dotted around the world. There are 20 in total. 7 of them relate to the different special stats, and the other 13 are just random perks that aren't on this perk tree. But those 7, there's one for strength, perception, endurance, and so on. When you pick them up, if you've already got 10 points in the actual special that the bobblehead is related to, so let's say, for instance, perception, the perception bobblehead is the first one you come across kind of naturally as part of the story, as long as you pick it up. If I already had 10 points in perception and I picked up the bobblehead, it would take me to 11. So it sort of over levels you. Now, the only benefit of that is that you get extra boost from the perception sort of benefits, the extra weapon accuracy in VATS, for instance. You don't get access to any new perks. It doesn't unlock an 11th perk or anything like that. So sometimes, you might need to decide for yourself at the beginning of the game, am I going to want to try and over level? If you are, then maybe you want to not pick up the bobbleheads until you've got that special to 10. But that's going to kind of motivate you to want to put all your points into that special and then go back and get the bobblehead. But is it really worth it? That's a question. Or is it better to use the bobblehead to level you up within the actual perk tree rather than taking you to an 11th level? Because that way you get earlier access to some of the perks, and it has a bigger impact on your player, and you don't have to worry about putting all of your points into the actual specials themselves just to be able to get the 11th level from the bobbleheads. So I would recommend not trying to overlevel because you don't get enough. It's not really worth the effort. The reward isn't worth the effort. But one thing that you can factor in is, we've built a character build here, but what you can do is if you know that you're going to get a certain a certain bobblehead early on in the game, for instance, the perception one, if you wanted to take one of these points away from perception when you build your character and only have 3 points in it, because you know that you're going to get the perception bobblehead and it's going to take you to 4, that means you're going to get access to the locksmith once you pick up the bobblehead anyway. So if you can live without leveling up your locksmith for the first mission or 2, and wait until you've got the bobblehead, then that frees up one of your starting points to be able to put in something like agility. And another thing is that early on in the game, when you get back to your house, and you'll know your house when you get there, it's destroyed, but you'll be searching around all the houses. When you get back to your house, go into the bedroom that your baby was in during the first part of the game, and underneath one of the cupboards will be a book. Now, this is a book that gives you an extra point in whichever special perk you want. Now, if you've already got a perk to 10, if you've already got, like we mentioned earlier, if you've got 10 points in perception, you can overlevel with bobbleheads, but you can't overlevel with this book. The book is called Your Special, and it's actually in your house during the opening sequence, but you can't use it then until after you leave the vault. But again, if you want to look at, as you're creating your build, if you want to calculate in your head and think, right, okay, so I want to have the local leader perk, for instance, but I want to free up some points to put in agility at the beginning. What you can do is think, right, I don't need local leader right at the beginning. That's not imperative to have it right from the start. In fact, I would probably recommend only putting a few points in charisma and putting those leftover points in agility, so you've got access to the stealth and the extra damage and all that kind of stuff. But if you put 5 points in here, for instance, you can think, right, I'm only going to put 5 points in. I'm going to put the spare point in agility, and then I'm going to use the Your Special book when I get home. It's very early on in the game. I'm going to pick up that book, and I'm going to use that to put towards my charisma. But to be honest, because it's so early on in the game, it doesn't really matter where you put it, because even if you have all these other perks up where I have them now currently, having taken one of these points off of this perk to put in agility is exactly the same as simply using the Your Special book on agility. So it's really up to you. I hope I've talked through some of the perks that I believe to be key, and some of the priorities that you probably want to focus on. There are things, there are a lot of things that are different to previous Fallout games. So hopefully some of this information has been helpful. I didn't really plan what I was going to say before I started recording this video. I've just kind of jumped in and spoken about my experience with the game and what I think is important. So I'm sorry if I've missed out anything. If you do have any questions at all, pop them in the chat, in the comments below. I'll try and answer them as quick as I can. If there's any videos that you'd like to see me do, then let me know, and check out my other videos in the meantime. I really hope this is going to help you guys enjoy the game. If you're new to the game, obviously, then this might be information that you find useful, and if there is anything else you'd like to know, then please let me know, because I love Fallout. I always have. Fallout 3 is my favourite game of all time, and I had such high expectations for this. I've been waiting for it for so long, and I'm so glad it's finally here. I've loved my time playing it, and I'm really glad to be at that point where I feel like I can pass on, I can pass on my knowledge to you in an attempt to help you enjoy it that much more. So there you go, guys. I'm going to leave. I'm sorry I've waffled on for so long. If you stuck with me throughout the whole video, then well done. You're awesome, and I love you. In the meantime, have a great time with the game, and I will catch you all in the next video. Thanks so much for the feedback. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you again. I love you all. Bye for now.